Bringing it up now.
David Chipman is not only qualified, but he's a person that we need in this position at this time. He's the leader that ATF needs. And I want to just share with you that I am very concerned about where this country is going with violence and guns. We are currently experiencing a wave of gun violence. So far, 21,000 people in the United States have died, lost their lives through gun violence. In fact, during Mr. Chipman's own nomination hearing, and while I was speaking, a gunman in San Jose, California, shot and killed 9 innocent people. So there are staccato shots of guns that, like I've never heard, in the numbers that are building up. Mr. Chipman's support for the enforcement of common sense gun restrictions, his dedication to ensuring that the ATF fulfills its mission of protecting our country, make him the candidate we need in this role at this time. I think he's uniquely qualified to lead the ATF. He's a former ATF agent. He knows what it's like on the streets. And I learned in a long time as mayor that the streets teach you a lot about what people are doing and thinking. He's not uniquely qualified to lead the ATF. So I think I will strongly vote for him. I hope enough members will vote for him, because with 21,000 people now dead from gun violence just in a short period of time, I think we need to look a little differently at what these jobs mean. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thanks, Senator
Chairman.
Feinstein. Senator Blackburn and then Senator Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and pardon me. We all know that the Second Amendment protects and guarantees our right to keep and bear arms. And the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives plays an important part in combating crime and protecting public safety. The director of the ATF should be an individual who is capable of pursuing this mission while maintaining a nonpartisan atmosphere within the organization and protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens. Now, that is the mission. Based on what we've all heard from Mr. Chipman in his testimony, based on what we've read and reviewed statements that he has made, he is showing himself incapable of meeting that mission and doing so in a nonpartisan and even-handed way. What we would expect from anyone that we appoint. Now, there are roughly 15.5 million Americans that hold hunting licenses. Nearly 20 million Americans have a concealed carry permit. I am one of those that has a concealed carry permit.
Don't mess with Marcia.
Roughly 4 in 10 Americans report having a registered firearm in their residence.
Did someone just hear somebody say,
Nearly
don't mess with
every
Marcia?
Major study has found that firearms are used in self-defense between 500,000 and 3 million times each and every year. That is the right of American citizens. Mr. Chipman has demonstrated through his testimony that he will neither respect nor protect the right to bear arms. There are 16 states, 30% of our nation, that allow citizens to openly carry their guns. And you've just heard about his Reddit Ask Me Anything interview. He stated there that open carry is frightening, and he thinks this is a fear we should avoid. Tennessee is a constitutional carry state. Mr. Chipman made clear in his testimony last month that he wants to ban the future manufacturing and sale of, and I'm quoting him, assault weapons. But he has demonstrated that he has an alarming misunderstanding of what an assault weapon actually is. I asked him if he referred to common semi-automatic rifles as assault weapons, and he affirmed, yes, he did. His definition, as Senator Cotton put it so aptly, would effectively ban all sporting rifles in the United States. But we know Mr. Chipman is no fool. Mr. Chipman has an agenda. It would be abridging our Second Amendment rights. It would be banning semi-automatic rifles and sporting rifles for those 15.5 million Americans that have a hunting license. He has a decorated history with the anti-gun lobby. As has been referenced, he has lobbied for Everytown for gun safety and was a senior policy advisor at the Giffords campaign. He has lobbied against high-capacity guns, but has defined a high-capacity gun as anything that holds more than 10 bullets at a time. He has advocated overturning the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, which would leave gun manufacturers liable for what purchasers do with their guns. I want you to think about that. It would make the gun manufacturers liable for what purchasers do with their gun. The logic falls apart when you apply it elsewhere. We do not hold auto manufacturers liable when drivers cause pileups. Most of the U.S. drives to and from work every day. Can you imagine what would happen if we suddenly applied this type logic to the actions of every single driver in this country? The logic with respect to guns is no different, but Mr. Chipman is far too partisan to see that. Again, he is no fool. He does have an agenda. And in 2017, he co-authored a blog for Giffords calling for 50 cal rifles to be regulated under the National Firearms Act. In other words, Mr. Chipman is willing to lie to push his anti-gun agenda. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives deserves a better leader. Americans deserve a better leader. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blackburn. Senators requesting recognition are Senator Leahy, Klobuchar, and Hawley. Yes, Blumenthal. Cope, Cornyn. Senator Leahy.
Mr. Chairman, it seems that any time we have any question, if anybody's going to be there to follow the law and to enforce the law when it involves guns, you would think that we're suddenly disarming people of the United States. We know people of the United States are not disarmed. We see this every other day. There's a mass shooting in the United States, and people do have guns. Mr. Chipman's a lifelong gun owner. But he knows that responsible gun ownership and common sense safety measures go hand in hand. We've had the we've had the Bureau without a permanent director since 2015. Well, there's probably a reason for that, because every time anybody talks about going in there to the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, everyone starts to say, oh my gosh, they're going to take our guns away. Well, I'm a gun owner. I'm probably the only person in this room that has a pistol range in his backyard. How many members of this committee have a pistol range in their backyard? Okay, so we got 3 and me, 4.
I don't.
Hmm?
I don't have one.
You don't have one. Your backyard's a little bit different than my 300-acre farm, let me tell you. But the point is, I helped put myself through college with a scholarship because of my skill on the rifle team. And the medals I won, the competitions I won. Somebody who's born blind in one eye, that was one thing I could do. I enjoy shooting. I enjoy target shooting. I also was a prosecutor, and I convicted a lot of people who used guns in crimes, people who were already had felonies and still were able to buy guns at gun shows, people who were end up sometimes killing people because of that, who should have been safe. Let's not be afraid of somebody actually enforcing the laws that are on the book, which is what Mr. Chipman do. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not going to have my guns taken away, nor Senator Cornyn's, nor any other law-abiding person. But if we're going to have laws on the books that the ATF is supposed to enforce, well, after all these years without a permanent director, let's have one. I'll vote for it.
Senators seeking recognition: Klobuchar, Hawley, Blumenthal, Cornyn. Any others? Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I want to put this in a context beyond Mr. Chipman. I led the effort for the last ATF director that actually got confirmed. You have to go back nearly 20 years. We've had one. He was from Minnesota. So during the time of Donald Trump, we had no confirmed ATF director. So I don't think this is just about Mr. Chipman. I think this is about the NRA. I think it's about people not wanting to hurt themselves and get some kind of
Yeah, there
points
goes
off
the
or a B
boogeyman,
grade
the
instead of an A
NRA.
grade. That's what I think this is about. Because when I did this back a few years back, it was toward the end of President
come on.
Obama's term. The guy's name is Todd Jones. He was a decorated Marine. He was the U.S. attorney. And I had to work all day one day just to get him through on a cloture vote. He was the acting U.S. attorney. He was the U.S. attorney, but he
There we
was
go.
also the acting ATF director, had not been in any scandals, had done a good job by all accounts when he was there, having inherited an agency that had some issues. But I got finally, after I think it was 8 hours we left the vote open. I got 6 Republicans to vote with me. 2 of them are still here, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. One of them was John McCain. You want to question his views on guns?
I absolutely
I don't think
do.
So. So I think what this is about the NRA. David Chipman, he has spent his career working to keep the American people safe. He served at the ATF for almost 25 years, more than half of the agency's existence as a special agent, field office manager, and chief of the firearms program divisions. If confirmed, he would actually be the first director to have served as an ATF special agent. So to say this is just some political appointment when it's actually the first guy that would have worked there for a long time, I think that's wrong. A lifelong gun owner, Mr. Chipman knows that responsible gun ownership and common sense safety measures go hand in hand, and his approach to gun violence stems from his belief that it is possible to balance rights and responsibilities. For many years, I have led the bill, common sense legislation, to close a dangerous loophole that allows domestic abusers to buy a gun simply when they're not married to the victims, but in fact are their boyfriends. We had a hearing on this many, many years ago, and Senator Grassley had several witnesses, very conservative witnesses, a conservative sheriff. And while they did not agree with the stalking portion of the bill, they actually agreed with closing this loophole, full stop, every single one of them. Yet, we can't even seem to get that done because of the NRA. Mr. Chipman's nomination has the support of numerous organizations, including the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association, the Police Executive Research Forum, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, and 17 current state attorney generals. His decades of experience in law enforcement make him exactly the right nominee for this critical position. And when I asked him, as ATF director, would he take on this small issue of closing this loophole that the Republican witnesses support, he said it would be one of his top priorities to get this done if he was confirmed as ATF director. So I don't think we can just look at this nominee on some isolated island. This is a part of a whole effort, and it's political. He's not political. How we've handled the ATF has been political, or we would have had a director under Donald Trump. We would have had a director confirmed under President Obama, and I wouldn't have had a cloture vote held open for 8 hours for a decorated Marine just to be able to have him be the only person confirmed as head of the ATF, the only person in 20 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Klobuchar.
David Chipman is one of the
We'll
most
recognize Senator Hawley next. Senator Blumenthal, Cornyn, and Kennedy are in the wings.
political.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to
ATF
say that I
person
appreciated
ever.
Senator Feinstein raising the issue of violent crime. I thought that that was an important point to make, and I appreciated her comment that the streets teach you a lot. And I think this is an important context for today's vote and indeed the issues that are facing the committee. As a former head prosecutor of my state, former attorney general of my state, I agree with that comment that the streets teach you a lot. I think that's absolutely right. And what the streets are teaching us now is that we are in the midst of a massive violent crime wave in this country. A massive violent crime wave in this country. Homicides are up over 30% in our major cities over the last year. That includes in my state. I have police officers when I go home to my state who beg me for help. And I mean beg me for help. Whether it's big cities, and Missouri's a diverse state. We've got big cities, we've got small towns, we've got rural areas. And wherever I go, police officers come to me and they say, we are desperate for help. We are outmanned, we are outgunned, we are overwhelmed, we can't recruit people, our morale is collapsing, we feel we have no support. It is a simple reality, and the American people are feeling it. The people in my state are feeling it. They are afraid to go out at night. They're afraid to go out on the streets. They're afraid to drop their children off at school. I mean, this is not the United States of America that we should have. This is a pressing issue that is affecting every single American, and yes, every cop in America. And I hope, Mr. Chairman, I raise this because I hope this committee will soon turn to this issue of violent crime in our country, and do something about it, and do something to support the men and women in blue who are out there on the line. And I have to say that in this context, when Mr. Chipman says things like, with regard to the Secret Service, I asked him about this when he was sitting right over there. He said in 2012 that their, meaning the Secret Service, use of guns, shooting guns is not necessary. Interesting idea. He goes on then to say, we need to think of strategies like that of just covering and evacuating in our schools. Now, he denied that he said that when he was in front of us. I don't know why, because it's on the record. We gave it to him as a QFR. I mean, you can go read the transcript yourself. My point is this. I don't think that our schools should be less safe. I can't vote for someone who says we ought to make schools in this country less safe in the midst of a crime epidemic. I don't know what I would tell the parents in my state. And when I look at Mr. Chipman's agenda, which is to take away Second Amendment rights from law-abiding citizens while violent criminals are loose on our streets, I just have to say, Mr. Chairman, I just respectfully disagree that that's the right agenda for us to have at this time. So I will not be supporting Mr. Chipman, and I hope that the committee will soon turn its attention to the epidemic of violent crime in our country. I hope we can find some solutions that we can agree on, and I respectfully submit, this is a question for another time, I respectfully submit that increasing officer pay and increasing the number of officers on the street is something where we might start. But for those reasons, I'll be opposing Mr. Chipman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Hawley. We have 3 senators seeking recognition, and I will close the debate at that point. We'll have a vote on Mr. Chipman at that moment. Senator Blumenthal is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, a number of us on this committee share an experience in law enforcement. Like my colleague from Missouri, I was our state's attorney general for some 20 years. I was the United States attorney in Connecticut, the chief federal prosecutor, and I believe more than anything, and I talk about it frequently, in enforcement, fair and effective enforcement of our laws. In fact, our laws are dead letter unless they're enforced. And that's why I'm going to vote for David Chipman. He is above everything else an enforcer. That's his life's experience, 25 years as an agent in ATF. He believes in enforcement. And if my colleagues across the aisle are really serious about stopping the wave of gun violence that we see in our streets, they will vote for David Chipman. If they are really serious about stopping violent crime, they will support effective enforcement of laws. And we can agree that this nation is awash in an ocean of crime guns, stolen and lost guns that have spurred a wave of violent crime across the country, focused mainly on the streets and communities that have those lost and stolen guns. So very briefly, there is a lot of mischaracterization and misrepresentation of what David Chipman has done or said. But at the end of the day, it is his enforcement background that makes him eminently qualified. I agree that we should address gun violence. In fact, Subcommittee on the Constitution has been having hearings on gun violence, on ghost guns, and red flag statutes, and other measures that can help to stop gun violence. So I welcome that focus and hope that we will confirm the nomination of a man who will be the second, only the second, confirmed director of ATF, a man who has spent 25 years of his life at that agency, a man who is dedicated to making these laws real in people's lives and making our streets and communities safer. And if my colleagues are really serious about fighting crime, they will say no to the NRA and other groups that have said again and again they want effective enforcement. They say continuously they want enforcement of existing laws, not new laws. Well, if they want effective enforcement, they ought to be in favor of David Chipman. And we need new laws, no question, but we also need effective enforcement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Cruz is now asked to be added to the list. I would just say to the members, this is a critically important issue and deserves all the time that we're going to devote to it. I don't question that for 1 minute. We have one other nomination and several bills before us today. We have other committees that have scheduled hearings and we have votes scheduled at 10:30 or 10:45. So the cooperation of the members in making their comments concise would be appreciated. Senator Cornyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief. When Mr. Chipman came before the committee, I asked him whether he believed that a law-abiding gun owner was a threat to public safety. paraphrasing his answer, he said, no, Senator, until they commit a crime. In other words, he views law-abiding citizens as potential criminals and uses that as a justification to restrict their rights under the Second Amendment to the Constitution. Like Senator Blackburn, and Senator Leahy, I guess, I'm a gun owner, and I don't believe I'm a threat to public safety. I don't believe Senator Leahy or Senator Blackburn are a threat to public safety as law-abiding gun owners. I see them as exercising their rights under the Second Amendment, and I support that. Most of our states have license to carry laws. Some states, like Vermont, you can carry a gun without a permit. And my state is joining Vermont with recent legislative action because we don't believe law-abiding gun owners are a threat to public safety, unlike apparently the nominee. But I would just say that anyone surprised with the desire of American citizens to purchase firearms and defend themselves and their families and their property in response to the defund police effort, I can't imagine why they would be surprised. If people believe that the law enforcement in their community should be defunded, the combination of that, along with the Ferguson effect that I think former FBI Director Comey talked about, the hesitancy of law enforcement to aggressively enforce the laws because of fear that they would be criticized if not prosecuted. We've seen this reflected in the decreased morale of law enforcement departments all across the country, difficulties in recruiting, huge increases in police officers retiring. Morale in our police departments is in the tank, primarily because of this unjustified effort to attack the very people we depend upon for our safety. That the more and more Americans are seeking to defend themselves by exercising their Second Amendment rights should not be a surprise. So, Mr. Chairman, I will not support Mr. Chipman's nomination for the very reason that he views all law-abiding Americans as potential criminals. I think that's disqualifying.
Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel the need to respond to the comments of my good friend, Senator Klobuchar. I think even a cursory examination of Mr. Chipman's record and even a casual observer of his testimony can see that he is a zealot. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a zealot. This is America. You can believe what you want. But he's being asked to run an agency whose mission is to even-handedly apply the law. And the reason I'm voting against this gentleman is because I believe he will use his position, based on his record and his testimony, to try to prosecute an agenda that he can't get by the voters through their elected representatives. And I wanted to say that for the record. Now, Senator Klobuchar, if you have any evidence that I'm voting against this gentleman, and I say this gently because I'm worried about the NRA or losing points on the NRA, I'd like to hear it.
I have the evidence that we have not confirmed an ATF director during this entire last 2 decades, except for one. And I was directly told as I tried to get votes to get cloture by Republicans that they were concerned about how the NRA would rank.
But I'm asking about
That
this
is-
Republican.
That is my evidence of
I'm
what's
asking
happening
about
here.
this Republican.
I can't get inside your brain or know your politics. I'm just saying in general, there is more evidence besides this one man
Okay.
about what's going on in our legislative efforts, what's going on in Congress, why we haven't been able to pass even common sense background checks when 90% of the American people support them. So I think this is much bigger than one guy. I just thought that point should be made.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And
Thank you.
by the way, even President Trump's nominee was too, because of concerns by Republicans on the gun issue. So it just never ends.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The last speaker before me, I think, is Senator Cruz, unless someone else is seeking recognition. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's interesting to hear our Democratic colleagues seeing boogeymen under every rock. And there is the frightful specter of the NRA on one side. There's the frightful specter of the Koch brothers on the other side. There are charts of dark money with red string and all sorts of perceived connections. There is a simpler explanation, which is that the American people actually value our right to keep and bear arms. You want to know who the members on this side are listening to? It's not some interest group. It's the hundreds of millions of Americans who want their constitutional rights protected, who want to be able to defend their families, and who don't want to see the government taking away their right to defend their home, their lives, and their family. That's something our Democratic friends don't seem to understand. This is not about a checkbook in Washington, D.C. This is about millions of constituents at home. I promise you, when John Cornyn and I go home, it's not the NRA we're worried about. It's Texans looking at us saying, don't you let them take our guns. And there are folks in every state here who feel that way. You know, it was striking during the campaign. In August 2019, Joe Biden was asked about people who think that a Biden administration, quote, means they're going to come for my guns. And Biden replies, bingo. You're right. If you have an assault weapon, the fact of the matter is they should be illegal, period. So we can thank President Biden for letting the cat out of the bag. He's made clear his agenda. And let's use the exact words, they're going to come for my guns. Bingo. That's what Joe Biden promised America he wanted to do. And in this case with Mr. Chipman, this is the manifestation of the promise, we're going to come for your guns. Mr. Chipman is a gun control zealot. He spent the last 6 years of his life working for one of the leading gun control organizations. And he came before this committee, and his testimony was remarkable. He testified that he thought Senator Feinstein's legislation on assault weapons didn't go nearly far enough. Now, Senator Feinstein and I disagree on that legislation, disagree strongly. Her sentiments are heartfelt, they're genuine. But Mr. Chipman said Senator Feinstein didn't go nearly far enough. She sought to ban some 2,000 different models of rifle. But he said it didn't go nearly far enough because he'd go after every single weapon people own right now, that he wouldn't just focus on the new sales. He was interested in whatever guns you have at your home right now to defend your family. And to be clear, Senator Feinstein's legislation wasn't just filed, it wasn't just considered in this committee, it was voted on the Senate floor. In the year 2013, I just arrived at the Senate. I was a brand new freshman. Had been here about as long as Senator Padilla, Senator Ossoff. It was the Harry Reid Senate. So I was in the minority. There was a substantial majority of Democrats in the Senate. Senator Feinstein's bill to ban so-called assault weapons, voted on the Senate floor, received 40 yes votes and 60 no votes. In a Democratic Senate. Among the senators voting no were Senator Bennett, Senator Heinrich, Senator Manchin, Senator Tester, Senator Udall, and Senator Warner, all Democrats, voted no. And Mr. Chipman says that bill that in a Harry Reid Democratic Senate could muster only 40 votes. It didn't go far enough. We need to be even more aggressive going after your guns. Now, I recognize in extreme left partisan environments, that sounds like a terrific idea. I recognize that there are Democrats who've run for office promising that we need judges and justices on the Supreme Court who will vote to overturn the Heller decision and to, in effect, repeal the individual right to keep and bear arms. But that's not the view of the American people. And it's not some mysterious lobby in town. It is hundreds of millions of Americans that value their freedom, their constitutional rights. And I got to tell you, this past year, there were a whole lot of Americans who hadn't actually thought a lot about the Second Amendment until suddenly we had riots in American cities all across the country. Till suddenly we had police cars being firebombed and shops being looted and people being murdered on the street in city after city after city. And we saw local Democratic politicians turn a blind eye to the violence. One Democratic politician described weeks and weeks of rioting and burning and violence, described it as, it's the summer of love. Well, I think actually elected officials have a responsibility to keep their citizens safe. I think writing off rioting and criminal violence as the summer of love is incredibly cynical and a dereliction of duty. But you know what? In a lot of those blue states, in a lot of those blue cities in blue states, there were a whole lot of folks that suddenly went to a gun store and said, you know what? If there's going to be a riot outside my house, I want to be able to defend myself if someone starts coming in the door or coming in the window seeking to do harm for my family. And by the way, when you have Democrats proposing abolishing the police, and not just proposing it, implementing it in cities like Minneapolis and cities like Portland and cities like New York City and cities tragically like Austin, Texas, slashing the budgets for police and seeing crime skyrocket, and then scratching their heads going, gosh, why would crime skyrocket? We just slashed the budgets for the police. You can understand why people say, if you're going to take away the police officers, for God's sakes, don't take away my ability to defend my family. I think Mr. Chipman is a nominee who is far out of the mainstream. If his position is what he told this committee, that he thinks we should go much further than Senator Feinstein's legislation, which commanded only 40 votes in a Democratic majority Senate, that does not reflect where the American people are. And this nomination is a chance for Senate Democrats to decide. I assume the membership of this committee that every Democrat in this committee is going to vote for Mr. Chipman. This tends to be a committee on both sides of the aisle that attracts some of the members who are more comfortable with taking clear positions. But there are at least some Democrats in the conference who, when they go home to their home states, they tell their constituents they support the Second Amendment. Some ways I'm grateful to President Biden for making this nomination because it's a clarifying moment. Every one of those Democrats who goes home and tells their constituents, no, I believe in the Second Amendment. No, I don't believe in confiscation. No, I won't ban guns. No, we shouldn't do that. Well, we got a nominee who supports confiscation, who wants to ban guns, who wants a registry, and who was appointed to carry out Joe Biden's promise, bingo, we're coming after your guns. So now it's a chance for each of the 50 Democrats to decide, where do you stand?
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Cotton has asked for recognition.
Yeah, I'll keep this brief. I think in some ways, David Chipman for President Biden is a perfectly suitable nominee because the Biden-Harris administration has already marked itself out as the most anti-gun and pro-crime administration in American history. President Biden gave a speech yesterday afternoon that was supposed to be about how to stop a crime wave that is crashing across this country with a murder rate that's increased in the single biggest jump on record over the last year. And what did he do? He basically threw in the towel. He said, yeah, I know that murders and violent crime went up a lot last year, and they went up a lot in the first few months of this year. But, well, crime goes up in the summer months too, so it's going to get even worse over the next 3 months. So I hope you don't get killed walking the streets of your community. And then what did he talk about? Did he talk about imposing tough sentences on people who commit crimes? Did he talk about adding more cops to the streets and quit attacking cops? No. He talked about gun control, about harassing law-abiding gun owners and gun stores, focusing on a kind of rifle that is less commonly used in murders in America than blunt objects like hammers and bats and frying pans and your bare fists. The vast majority of murders and crimes in this country are committed by pistols, which would be almost totally unaffected by some of the Democrats' proposals. So think about what Joe Biden wants to do. He wants to ignore the gun crimes that are happening in cities across America while he takes away the rifle you have in your home to protect yourself from those very criminals. So again, it shouldn't be surprising that he's nominated a man like David Chipman, an anti-gun radical. In his hearing, I asked him very simply, what is an assault weapon? And he couldn't define it because it's a made-up, fictitious term crafted by a bunch of liberal pollsters and lawyers and politicians in Washington to describe a kind of weapon based on mere cosmetic features. Go into a gun store, look at the labels in the aisles. You can find an aisle for shotguns, you can find one for pistols, you can find one for rifles. You won't find one for assault weapons because it is a fake, made-up term. Now, when I pressed him, he finally acknowledged that he would call a assault weapon, let me be precise here, any semi-automatic weapon larger than a .22 caliber with a detachable magazine. That is almost every modern sporting rifle in America. That is one of the most radical proposals that we've ever heard in Congress. And again, it would do almost nothing to affect the gun crimes that are happening in this country right now. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all the Democrats in the Senate can talk about why we have this crime wave. Oh, it's the pandemic. People are isolated. They're unemployed. Woe is us. What are we going to do? Well, guess what? The pandemic is basically over and crime is still going up. Other countries face this pandemic as well. They didn't have such a large increase in crime. Let me tell you why we have a large increase in crime. One, we are letting violent, serious, repeat felons out of prison, as this Congress did with the First Step Act. We are refusing to send them to prison in the first place, as radical prosecutors like Chesa Boudin in San Francisco refuse to even do their job. And three, we are harassing the police for doing their jobs, and we are slashing their budgets. That's why we have a crime wave in America. And until we stop it, that crime wave will continue.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. A lot has been said about what Joe Biden believes. Let me read from a statement yesterday. I hope all of you have it, fact sheet provided by the administration addressing the issues of crime and how to deal with them. Let me read the opening paragraph page. The strategy will use the rescue plan, the American Rescue Plan, which we know full well on the Democratic side, the American Rescue Plan's historic funding levels and clear guidance to help state, local, territorial, and tribal governments get the money they need to put more police officers on the beat, with the resources, training, and accountability they need to engage in effective community policing. In addition to supporting proven community violence intervention programs, summer employment opportunities, and other investments we know will reduce crime. Page after page. Page 5, provide law enforcement the tools and resources they need to tackle gun violence. Does that sound like Joe Biden's throwing in the towel on law enforcement? No, not to me. It sounds like he's making an investment in law enforcement, which we all, at least I applaud, and I think is absolutely essential. You see, I represent the city of Chicago, and I'm proud to do it, but we are facing a wave of gun violence and death unheard of. And we're not the only place. And it isn't just because it's a blue mayor in a blue city in a blue state. It's happening in the downstate red counties and communities as well. One of the reasons I think is very obvious. We are awash in guns, awash in guns. go into the toughest neighborhoods of Chicago and ask the teenagers there how quickly they can provide you with a gun if you have $50 in hand, and they'll tell you 15 minutes. Can you wait 15 minutes? Over 400 million guns in a nation of 350 million people. We don't think there's a cause and effect here. When they decide to sell guns at gun shows in northwestern Indiana without a background check, those guns find their ways into the streets of Chicago. And that's what we have to deal with. In terms of representing the view of the American people, our friends on the other side have a view of that. 84% of the American people, including most gun owners, believe we should have meaningful background checks. This committee is virtually incapable of passing such legislation. And 54% of Americans, despite all the rhetoric we've heard on assault weapons, believe that they should be at least licensed, not licensed, but at least monitored. And some would go so far as to say they shouldn't be sold. But the fact is, we're not dealing with radical notions when the majority of the American people support what we're saying. The point I would like to make as I close is that we're talking about one individual, David Chipman. Going back to the point made by Amy Klobuchar earlier, the reason that they leave this ATF position vacant is because there's less enforcement as a result of it. And unfortunately, that has been the case, as you well know. David Chipman has certainly been involved in gun safety organizations, but he also has the support of law enforcement, including the Hispanic American Police Commanders, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, 17 current state attorneys general, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National Black Police, Sheriff David Mahoney of Dane, Wisconsin, Women in Federal Law Enforcement, Prosecutors Against Gun Violence. We all have our opinion on this individual, and I think it's time for us to take a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll on David Chipman.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Ms. Feinstein. Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Corona. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Oswald.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley. Mr. Graham. Mr. Cornett. Mr. Lee. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Sacks. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis. Ms. Blackbird. Chair Durbin. Chair, votes are 11 yeas, 11 nays.
The committee's recorded a tie vote on Mr. Chipman's nomination to be Director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives pursuant to Section 3, subsection 1A of Senate Resolution 27 of the 117th Congress. I'll transmit to the Secretary of the Senate a notice of this tie vote under Section 3, Section 1B of that resolution. Either the majority or minority leader may then make a motion to discharge the nomination. Next, we have the nomination of Cherdu to be Director of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Does any senator seek recognition?
All right. So that was a tie vote. Let me just shut down my stream here. Not my stream, but my other thing going on here. Damn it. Come on. All right. So it was a tie, which a tie in the Senate. Let's look this up. I'm not really sure. So I don't think he's gonna get through. They have to report it. I know that. Hold on. I will find out in 1 second here. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. It definitely go to the House now. Give me 1 second here, guys. Hey, so since Chipman tied, what does that mean? Okay, so he's out of he gets out of committee. Okay. Okay. All right, thanks. All right, bye. All right, guys. I just wanted to verify to make sure before I tell you anything that's wrong, I wanted to be able to tell you guys what is going to happen. So he does get voted out of committee, but instead of being voted out favorably, favorably, he'll be voted out to the full Senate as no recommendation. So basically, he gets out, but it's saying the judiciary doesn't recommend or not recommend. Even if he would have lost, he still would have been reported to the complete Senate, but it would be unfavorably. But right now, it's neither favorably or unfavorably. So that is what's going on. So that's why the tie. I just wanted to verify that I had everything right before I told you guys. So I called someone who is a lobbyist that's currently on the Hill right now in the room. So I just wanted to make sure that I had everything all right before I told you guys. So he will move forward with no recommendation, basically. Yeah, it's out of the judiciary now. No, it's not in limbo. No, it still advances. But the recommendation is that there's no recommendation. Because the judiciary, he would have passed on to the full vote, whether it was favorable and non-favorable. What they do is they vote and they say, okay, well, it's he can pass with a non-favorable with a non-favorable recommendation from the judiciary, which basically is doom. But this is basically no recommendation. I just wanted to make sure that I had that right before I went on record and told you guys that. I always double check my stuff. They will. They will, Chris Bullis. I don't know when, but they will. It will have to be scheduled and stuff like that. I would probably say 2 weeks, maybe less, maybe more. But it's not going to be tomorrow. No, the G-Webs, they have to schedule it, and they have to go to scheduling and stuff like that. It reports back and then they schedule it. No, it does mean something, Grillo's Guns. If he would have got an unfavorable recommendation, the nomination probably would have been pulled because there's no way he would have got through the whole Senate. We don't know Chris Bullis. This looked like it was strictly on a party line vote, so no Republicans voted. So it doesn't look good for him, actually, to tell you the truth, because they can block a nominee by filibustering. You need a supermajority. So they got flip 10 Republicans, and I don't see that happening. So it will move on. But yeah. No, G-Webs. You would still get reported to the Senate. It would have been an unfavorable recommendation from the judiciary, which is political death. But now it's like no recommendation. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if they reported them favorably, unfavorably, or whatever with a tie. And they just don't report anything. They just say no recommendation. Which I should have figured, and I kind of did figure, but I wanted to make sure. And just for everyone out there, I want to show you guys something. 28EDU, you guys don't know, is an awesome guy. He is now a member of the Black Swan Media family. And we have a new shirt and we have patches coming out. I'll show you the shirt and patches because I got to plug something, right? Because I just do. This right here is the new shirt. Future Felons of America. What do you guys think? And we also have some patches from our boys over at Toxic Patches. Kimball was a tie. So he's going to be reported with no recommendation. I think a lot of people misunderstood this whole thing. But yeah. These will be the patches. We'll be selling it for $10. So it's more than a formality, but it's not what people thought it was. Any other questions before we get out of here? We got another live stream today, I think. Okay. With that said, I got to get back to work on some stuff here. I got some stuff that I can't really talk about, but I'm working on. Not a story. Other stuff. Dark knows what it is. But I've been going back and forth consulting on something here. Okay, what is that? Make sure you join the Patreon. Not the Patreon. You can join the Patreon if you want, but I have a Discord. The link is in the description if you're on YouTube. There's my Patreon if you want to help support me on Patreon. I have a Discord. I would love for you guys all to chat with me on Discord. It'd be great. And with this, thank you guys for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Check out Johnny B later on. His correction video should be up later on. I don't want to go back to war. I don't like war. I like fighting against David Chipman in the ATF more than other YouTubers. So we'll have to see what the video says when it passes. You don't Discord? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, follow me on Instagram, whatever. Or just follow me here. I have that join button. You hit that join button below. You can help support the channel. Got Devin and I. We have some videos coming out this weekend where Devin and I are doing a really awesome thing on Saturday. That's Trenchwork Chronicles. You guys will see Devin. If you don't know, Devin is my little brother. Even though Devin doesn't really look like my little brother, but he's my little brother from another mother, as they like to say. Devin is a cool guy. Go follow Trenchwork Chronicles. Awesome guy. One of my good friends. Gorillas and Guns will also be there on Saturday as well. And you'll see some videos drop Saturday. Gorillas and Guns knows what I'm talking about too. My partner in crime over at Virginia Reloaded this Saturday at tell me what Discording is. It's a program. Saturday at 10 p.m. All right. Cool kid stuff. Yeah, cool kid stuff. Devin is young enough to be my son, which is scary. So I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, stay free. Oh, man, I'm messing it up. Stay ever vigilant. Stay ever free. Keep in the fight. And I am out.